Hello everybody, I'm Rene Ramos, Director of the Lynn and Louis Wolfson II Florida Moving Image Archives, and this is Rewind, the show that looks back on Florida's past with historic film and video. It's time for another trip back into the past, so sit back, relax, and enjoy another episode of Rewind.
This is Miami, gateway to Latin America. Miami the Magnificent, a magic city, a city known the world over as a vacation paradise. A distinctive American city with a strong Latin American flavor, possessing the finest of modern buildings, with a year-round population rapidly approaching 250,000, an amazing monument to only a half-century of growth. A far cry from the tiny village of 1900 on the banks of the Miami River. Across Biscayne Bay in the distance is Miami Beach. Washed by the warm waters of the Atlantic, its magnificent hotels afford a luxurious background in which to enjoy a vacation in a subtropical wonderland. The splendor of Miami Beach has appropriately earned for this fabulous stretch of sand the name Finer Hotels is the Saxony, constructed so as to provide the ultimate in gracious living. Its inviting saltwater swimming pool is preferred by those who enjoy their swimming on the tamer side. For the winter visitor with some sporting blood, Miami provides world-famed beautiful Hialeah Park. Against the palm-studded backdrop, thoroughbreds rounding the final turn and entering the stretch never fail to evoke a thrill for the racing enthusiast. Highlight of Miami's sporting events is the annual New Year's Day Orange Bowl Football Classic, in which two of the nation's top-flight football teams battle it out. While between the halves, the lovely Orange Bowl Queen acknowledges the applause of over 60,000 spectators. In Coral Gables is situated the new functional campus of one of the South's largest universities, the University of Miami. Here, 10,000 students have gathered from 46 states and many Latin American countries to pursue knowledge in this part of subtropic America. Downtown Miami presents the usual scenes characteristic of almost any large American city. Modern office buildings such as the Alfred I. DuPont building, busy thoroughfares as Flagler Street. Great stores like Sears Roebuck. While the Florida Power and Light Company supplies power to keep the wheels of South Florida's industries moving. Miami has an often overlooked side, its small but bustling seaport. Located near the southern tip of the Florida Peninsula, midway between the U.S. Gulf and Atlantic ports, on the most direct route between the Pacific and the eastern seaboard via the Panama Canal. The harbor of Miami is safe and sheltered, and tides do not present much of a problem, although care must be taken in entering the 5-mile-long channel called Government Cut. which gives direct access to the docking area. Through the port of Miami passes all manner of vessels, from the President's yacht and luxurious cruise ships, such as the SS Florida and the Nuevo Dominicano, to tankers and freighters from all over the world. Miami's harbor traffic in 1948 amounted to almost 1 3/4 million tons. Not bad for a small port. The bulk of all waterborne cargo that enters the port of Miami from the major East Coast ports, such as Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Baltimore, is carried in ships operated by the Pan Atlantic Steamship Company, a subsidiary of the Waterman Steamship Lines. Pan Atlantic maintains a bi-weekly freight schedule to Miami from the north. These modern freighters of the C3 class carry some 10,000 tons of freight. Miami is still primarily a consuming market. Its economy is not yet built around industry, which produces for distant markets. Consequently, its imports are always greater than its exports. Miami's imports are fundamentally consumption merchandise. The manifest of vessels, such as this, lists almost everything imaginable that is used in everyday life. Cleansing agents, soaps, foodstuffs, medicines, radios, refrigerators, paper goods, and so on indefinitely. Once unloaded, our freighter continues its voyage to the Gulf ports of Tampa, Mobile, and New Orleans. The main piers of Miami are all directly accessible by rail, and this facilitates and speeds up both incoming and outgoing cargo. Miami is well served by two major railroads, the Seaboard and the Florida East Coast. Trucks quite naturally also play an important role in the transporting of merchandise to and from the piers. In the case of one of Miami's most distinctive and important imports, bananas, trucks handle the lion's share of the 80 million pounds of the tropical fruit which clears through the port every year. Yes, bananas it is. Let's take a look at this banana business and start from scratch on a plantation in Colombia and follow a shipment through until it is loaded on an over-the-road truck in Miami. Here we are on a small independent plantation in Colombia in the shadow of the Andes. On these plantations, bananas are still handled in a rather primitive fashion because of the low cost of human labor. First, the bananas are cut down and backed over to an old ox cart. Which at a funeral-like gait is driven down to a clearing alongside the railroad tracks. Here they are first dipped in a chemical solution which kills any insects, spiders, or snakes which might be lurking among the bunches. The next dip in water washes off the poisonous solution, and so cleansed, they are carried over and loaded onto an old ancient train. Here they go on their way down to the port of Santa Marta for loading, aboard the ship which will transport them to Miami. Unloading the freight cars and loading the vessel is the same old manual job. Tied up at the dock, ready to be loaded with some 20,000 stalks, is a typical Caribbean banana boat with its air-cooled holds. Loading bananas is a delicate operation. Particular care must be exercised when the bananas are being lowered into the hold. Notice how they must be carefully stowed, because even the slightest bruising at this point will render the fruit commercially valueless upon arrival in Miami. The loading completed, once again the Rexton Kent heads northward toward Miami. No sooner has the familiar skyline of Miami come into view than the customs boat comes out to see that everything is in order before docking. Once the vessel is safely tied up, no time is lost in setting up the conveyor belts so that the bananas may be unloaded quickly to prevent ripening in the warm climate. While these operations are in progress, the public health officer goes aboard to check ship's personnel for any possible sickness. This gentleman descending the gangplank is not an Arctic explorer. He is none other than the genial ship's agent, who is evidently most pleased with the situation at this point. Under the watchful eye of the cargo supervisor, the bananas begin to move out of the vessel on conveyor belts directly into the waiting trucks. Notice the careful inspection of each stalk and how any substandard fruit is discarded on the spot. These refrigerated trailer trucks call at the port of Miami from all parts of the United States. Soon they'll be rolling to markets as far north and west as Chicago. Although Miami has a relatively valuable seaport, this aspect is slighted by its tremendous importance as an airport. Today, from a modest beginning in a small plot of ground with one or two buildings in 1928, Miami's International Airport has grown into an industrial giant comprising more than 2,500 acres, 324 buildings, 10 miles of roads, and 15 miles of runways. A new construction program is now in progress, which calls for a $2 million terminal area, 9,400-foot runways, and the enlargement of the airport to 3,000 acres. At the 20th Street terminal are housed the non-scheduled independent airlines. Typical of this new air industry is American Air Transport Incorporated. This airline was the first to operate cloud coach flights out of Miami. The Miami International Airport ranks first among the airports of the nation in the number of international passengers arriving and departing from this country.
Attention please. Delta Airlines northbound flight number 644 is now ready for departure. Passengers for Jacksonville, Atlanta, and Chicago will please board through gate number 1 for immediate departure. All aboard, please, and no smoking on the ramp.
Arriving at the International Airport as one of KLM's Royal Dutch airliners, familiarly known as the Flying Dutchman. Passengers arriving from foreign countries are handled in a different manner from those coming and going on domestic flights. Until they've been cleared through customs, they must be kept together under the watchful eyes of the customs inspectors. It was no mere chance that Miami was selected by Eastern, Pan American, and National Airlines as their chief maintenance and overhauling center. Miami has become the site of the world's largest and finest airline maintenance base. The goal of the airlines has been to save time and achieve greater efficiency in maintenance operations by applying mass production factory methods to airline shop procedure. Here are the men and equipment that keep the giant ships in tip-top condition. An army of skilled engineers, mechanics, and inspectors who, though seldom noticed by the traveling public or shippers, share equal credit with flight crews for the airline's outstanding records for safe and dependable service. Miami was selected for the centralized maintenance not only because of its convenient location, but also because of its unrivaled climate, which permits outdoor work virtually every day of the year. But it's in the field of air cargo, the lustiest, fastest growing, most precocious infant aviation ever produced, that Miami really shines. The different kinds of commodities being flown today is almost unbelievable. A decade ago, air cargo was regarded with skepticism. Businessmen viewed it as an emergency method of shipment, useful only for mail and for small, highly valuable packages. Speed sometimes is the main factor. This car has been flown in from Cuba, so its returning owner can have it for immediate use upon arrival in this country. Air cargo destined for Latin America arrives by plane, train, and truck. Most of it has to be warehoused temporarily, where it is inspected and the necessary export documents given a final check. The loading of cargo planes generally begins in the late afternoon and continues at night with a pre-dawn takeoff advisable, since many Latin American airports are not adequately equipped for night landings. Some freight, particularly the heavy stuff, is trucked directly to the loading plane to save time and valuable storage space. Air cargo traffic men claim, not without some justification, that shipment by air, even for bulky articles, is economical because of the time saved, the elimination or reduction of stevedoring costs, the savings on insurance, packing, and damage. The case for air cargo shipments is even more clear-cut when the foreign destination is inland. After the cargo is safely and securely stowed away, the pilot and co-pilot, after one final check of the manifest, climb aboard. With an okay to taxi over for the start and the final takeoff clearance from the tower, once again, another cargo plane leaves Miami. Yes, truly, the gateway to Latin America.
That's about it for this edition of Rewind. Just time to remind you that Rewind features historical film and video from the Lynn and Louis Wolfson II Florida Moving Image Archives. To see more from the Wolfson Archives collections, visit our website, wolfsonarchives.org. You can search the archives catalog and watch video online. And be sure to connect to our YouTube channel, where you will find hundreds of carefully curated clips, or link to the Wolfson Archives Facebook page to keep up with our busy calendar of historical happenings. Until next time, I'm Rene Ramos. Thanks for watching.